With a character lineup as diverse as Garden Warfare 2, with over 120 characters at your disposal, there are bound to be some outliners within the roster who people consider to be the best, such as Astronaut and Agent P. And there are characters who people consider to be absolutely fucking awful, such as Toxic Citron and Wrestling Star. But then, there is Chomp Thing, a character that is quite the diverse set of opinions around him. Some say that he is the absolute worst character in the game, whilst others disagree, saying that his perks carry him a lot more than one may believe. Well, rather than just stating my personal preference and fucking off, why don't we analyze both sides and see what conclusion we can come up with? Let's get started. Obviously, before we even take a side or compare delusional opinions, let's first reacquaint ourselves with what Chomp Thing has to offer. For starters, Chomp Thing only has a grand total of 135 health, 40 less than the base Chomper's 175. This is already quite the significant downside to status of, as going from 175 health to 135 puts Chomp Thing under quite a few kill thresholds, such as Imp Punt, Barrel, and Explosive Escape, just to name a few. Chomp Thing is also a spray-based chomper, having slightly more range and a weapon that can overheat if used too much, and it deals okay damage, but nothing to write home about unless you trigger spam. So far, we just have what is essentially a shittier chomper that can overheat and become more vulnerable, but luckily for Chomp Thing, he does have a unique perk up his sleeve that actually makes him quite prominent in a few scenarios. That perk in question being his fast as fuck health regeneration. Chomp Thing regenerates health 75% faster than every other character in the game, and most importantly, only has a 1-second delay before said health regeneration. This essentially allows him to play around cover much more effectively than other characters, since all that needs to be done is to break line of sight for all of a single second before you begin regenerating health. This becomes especially apparent when you grant Chomp Thing both the health upgrade and the health regeneration upgrade, since not only will it allow him to tank slightly more damage, but once the health regeneration kicks in, you will be able to easily recover from near fatal wounds within mere seconds. And because Chomper has access to Burrow, an ability that for the most part makes you essentially invincible for a few seconds against any class that isn't an engineer, you are guaranteed to be able to recover at least half your health before you resurface. This health regeneration perk can be extremely useful in allowing Chomp Thing to sponge as much damage as the likes of the base Chomper, or even Armor Chomper if the Chomp Thing is constantly pressured. Now I can just say all this and expect some people to believe me, but let's actually show an in-game scenario of how much the health regeneration comes into effect. In this Team Vanquish game, for example, I take a one-on-one fight against a pylon mech and goop him from range, knowing that I cannot directly take a one-on-one with him due to the distance I would have to walk. The pylon mech keeps applying pressure with constant shots as I strafe around the globe in the center. If I was a normal chomper, the constant splash damage would eventually whittle me down and then kill me, but because I am Chomp Thing, I can very easily recover chunks of health at a time and absorb far more damage than one would expect. Coming back to this fight, I constantly play around the globe, taking damage and regenerating it quickly before the pylon mech finally comes down and ejects. I use Burrow to avoid the gravity nade combo and stay in it for a few seconds to recover some of my health back. This may be just one scenario, but it shows how important playing around cover can be, and breaking line of sight can allow you to recover just enough health to offset how much an enemy has dealt with you. This also allows you on average to engage in more fights if no sunflowers are present, since you essentially heal yourself. Now provided, if an enemy has near perfect tracking, or use a move like Imp Punt that deals far too much damage, obviously a Chomp Thing won't be able to survive such high burst damage. But in those cases, it's all about paying attention and being very observant of one's surroundings. Sometimes it's about acting like you didn't see someone before suddenly bamboozling them. It's all about paying attention. So, we've established how Chomp Thing can be good, but why do some people go as far as to say that he is the worst character in the game? Well, let's investigate some common queries as to why. Statement 1. Chomp Thing has far too little health and just dies too quickly. This is the most common statement, and whilst it does hold a little given his initially lower health pool and larger hitbox, it lacks a lot of weight due to two main contradictions. One being his aforementioned health regeneration, which unless you just do the pyro stereotype of WM1 like a dumbass, it easily makes up for the amount of health lost initially. The other contradiction is that some people would often just say something like,
if I wanted to tank a lot of damage as a Chomper, I could just go and pick Armor Chomper.
I mean, if you have like 20 years to spare in just getting to the bastard victim in question, then be my fucking guest. Statement 2. Chomp Thing doesn't have any range. This is more of an issue with the Chomper class as a whole rather than Chomp Thing, but what you should keep in mind is that unless you're some Nixley wannabe who spent 9,000 hours playing Osu with both thumbs in a sling whilst somehow masturbating like a flexible motherfucker, you should never engage with someone at all, unless you're confident you can reach them and deal with them before they deal with you. It's always better to have the element of surprise when it comes to any Chomper, no matter the variant. Statement 3. His weapon can overheat, making him useless. This does have some weight since overheating essentially makes you entirely defenseless and either forces ability usage at an unoptimal time or forces you to just run away. Thing is, this becomes less of a problem if one puts in the time to learn heat management and knowing how long your weapon can last before giving it a break. This applies to every character with a heat-based weapon as well, and not just Chomp Thing. With all of this being said, is Chomp Thing as bad as people say he is? Honestly, I would have to say no. Whilst he is still plagued with the weaknesses and situational quirks of the Chomper class in general, his enhanced health regeneration comes in handy in a lot more situations than one would think, and the benefits can allow home to essentially sponge a surprisingly high amount of damage. Be sure to come back next week for the next experimental upload. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to subscribe for more shit like this. Have fun.